Welcome to Journey Now, a podcast about following Jesus that takes on serious issues without ever taking itself too seriously. Each week, the pastors, staff, and friends of Journey Church in Brentwood, Tennessee gather to catch up, share life together, and laugh a little. Okay, a lot. Maybe too much. But along the way, they also explore what it really means to bring heaven to earth, share Jesus' hospitality, and live cross-shaped lives. Part babble, part Bible, and occasionally even thoughtful and entertaining. This is Journey Now. You guys, today is so exciting. It's so exciting. Everyone is out of town. Mike's out of town, Tim's out of town, Kevin's out of town. And you know what they say?
What do they say?
We don't know what they say.
When the cat's out of town, the mice get down. So this is a highly requested podcast today, guys. I have my friends here, my good friends here, Summer Friesen and Krista Barre to my right. They are both elders here at Journey. Woo-woo. They serve on the elder team. And then the fabulous Betsy Raney, who is with child currently.
I am. And it's a girl.
It's a girl. So yeah.
So how appropriate.
Sweet Edwin is here producing, and he is outnumbered and maybe slightly afraid, but we said we would be really nice. But people have been asking, our two listeners have been asking for a female presence, like a full female presence, because there's been times where I've been gone from the podcast, and there hasn't been another woman's voice on here, and it seems like what people tell me is that things kind of sometimes get out of hand, So
it's true. I mean, I'll say that.
So we, they talk about things like that they really have authority on, like, for example, how difficult pregnancy is, right?
Oh, yeah, I heard that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
heard that one. Yeah.
And they talk about biblical womanhood. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, guys, we're here to talk about low T today. No, we're actually not, because I was telling these guys that, like, it's funny when men talk about stuff like that, but, like, if we were going to, like, bring up all the things, it would not be, I think people would probably turn it off.
Oh, I think we would. You would hear a lot of feedback.
We would hear some feedback.
Yeah,
for sure.
There's probably some taboo subjects and
body parts.
Like, even we can't even go find the line to not cross. We can't even do that.
Yeah,
we just have to stay.
Yeah.
In our lane.
Yeah. So we're gonna see where this conversation goes today. But Edwin kind of set us up with some fluffy flowers here on the table that like nothing screams women's ministry more than fake peonies,
silk flowers,
and peeing the
feminine flowers.
Yeah. And the books on the table. He wanted me to bring in some books that are relevant. And what's funny is I've gotten rid of a lot of my
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get a flower. It's so thoughtful.
I've gotten rid of a lot of books that I no longer have use for.
So proud of you.
Yeah, but these are great books. They're very interesting books.
I never had any of those books.
So
I think I rejected them right out of the gate.
Yeah, so this first one, Two Views on Women in Ministry, is a really great book if you're someone who's trying to understand the different views of whether women can and should lead. And then this one is over 10 years old. It's called Slaves, Women, and Homosexuals. And it addresses the perceived trajectory that some people think happens when you let women lead. It opens the door to all kinds of wokeism.
Interesting.
And then this one's actually really good. It's Shepherding Women in Pain, and it has a lot of really great insight for different things that women suffer through in life. So
yeah, interesting. Good.
So I wanted to have you guys on here because you're all women who lead currently. And, we could talk about a lot of things. And personally, sometimes I get really tired of the women in leadership conversation, but I know that a lot of other people don't, and it's still a very it's a very important conversation to have. So every time we have it, I realize how important it is. So I don't know, maybe we could just kind of go around, starting with you, Summer, and you can share with us a little bit about your inherited tradition or understanding of that and where you are now and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Colorado. Whoop, whoop. And I grew up in a pretty charismatic church. My parents actually became Christians in their adulthood. So my mom was a bit of a feminist, and actually what drew her to Jesus was the way that he treated women.
Wow. So were you born already when they became Christians?
It was around the time my brother and I were born.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I grew up in a Christian home, but that wasn't necessarily their background or tradition.
Okay.
So I have a pretty strong mom as an example. So that was a great one. My experience with kind of experiencing roles of women, so to speak, has actually probably come to pass more in the business world, because I have worked in corporate America.
Yeah.
I've worked in several male-dominated industries. My company now is actually pretty well represented with women, probably about 50%. But
Tell our
that's
listeners what
rare
you
thing.
do.
I'm in insurance.
Okay.
So I was in the banking world prior to that, and then I work in insurance now. So financial services tends to be more of a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
So that's been more of the experience of, especially I started in my 20s, of being a young female working in a male-dominated industry. That's kind of been some of my experience outside of the church. And then I have never really been involved in leadership within the church.
Yeah, that's what I think is so amazing,
So,
because you have so much to give.
Yeah.
There is so much in you. That's like amazing that you haven't.
Well, thank you. I was shocked when you called me about
Yeah.
being an elder.
Elder Summer, as I call it.
Yeah.
Elder
Well,
Summer,
I
as
mean, in
Betsy
terms of-
calls
in
me.
terms of-
Thank you, Sister Betsy.
Yeah, like
You're
in
welcome.
terms of what we look for, obviously is, commitment to Jesus first, commitment to journey, and an understanding of our culture. But you bring a really great public presence. Like, you can speak in front of people really well. You have the business acumen. You have great discernment from the conversations that we've had over the years and the stuff that we've been through as a church. And you've been here a long time. So you've seen a lot of different iterations, as you have too, Krista, of journey. And so, I mean, yes, highly qualified.
Well, I'm feeling a bit of imposter syndrome. I'm like, what authority do I have on this? On biblical womanhood, I guess I am a woman and
You're a
believe in the Bible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All the authority you need right there.
Yeah, there you go.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
My story is a little different. I grew up. What you have to know about me is that I grew up in a lot of chaos. So at home, and then we jumped from church to church to church. So I experienced a lot of shifting in theology and how we do Sunday morning and how we do through the week. And the fun part is that I also went to Christian schools. So, and I jumped from school to school to school. So, in the overarching thing that was through all of that was patriarchy and misogyny. So I learned at a real early age to enter a space and figure out how to survive and how to succeed, and then just adapt to that. So no matter where I was in school or where I was in church, I would just kind of figure out, okay, we're wearing dresses now. Okay, dresses. We have long hair now. Okay, now we have long hair. Just a lot of those messages that, very legalistic environments give women. Never saw women in leadership. Women were, the helpers. They were the supporters. They were taking care of the kids, taking care of the home. And really early, I started to realize that I was rewarded for outward behavior. But inside, I just was, pretty sarcastic and, like hateful even and angry. And, like the behavior wouldn't match my insides. And then I just started to I think, see that disconnection between how kids, like the outward behavior and then the inward behavior in the heart. And as I was entering all these different spaces, I would, adapt to whatever it was that was expected of me. But then also, like, I became laser focused on being in those spaces to help other adults around me realize that the inside and the outside weren't matching, So I moved here. I'm from Ohio, actually. I should probably start with that. From Ohio. I've been married 30 years to my husband, Nick, who is awesome.
Yeah.
We have 3 boys. They're 2 young adults and an 18-year-old, like new college kids. So, just what's interesting is being a woman in the church and having boys.
Yeah.
And trying to like raise them in a way where they see women as equals and, appreciate women in leadership. So it's been an interesting ride and continues to be.
Yeah. And Summer, you have 2 boys. I have 4 boys.
Yes.
Betsy.
I'm having a girl.
So,
My sister has 3 though.
Yeah.
If that counts.
Yeah. And you're just getting started. So.
Yeah, this is true.
You pass.
I just thought of something though about you too, is that, so when I first came to Journey, I came from this bad experience and we just moved here and I didn't want to talk to anybody for a long time. Like I just wanted to come to church and cry and leave with my family. And the day I decided I was going to like talk to people and like say hello to people, who's standing there but Krista. Krista and Meg, who are like the most welcoming, hospitable people you will ever meet. And so like they're moms of boys and we just started talking and they invited me to lunch and all the things.
That's a solid choice for
first
connection.
Totally. But I'm just realizing now, just hearing your story again, which I've heard before, but all of that moving around and all of that chaos and all of that going into new spaces, like that has totally made you into this person who's so focused on welcoming, especially people who don't fit in. I mean, I heard you say the other day that you taught your boys that when they're standing around talking to friends, that you always told them to stand in a semicircle so that people could see that there was a way in. And I'm like sitting there going, I've never thought of that. And I completely missed the boat.
I've also heard her say that and that stood out to me. I was like, I need to make that mental note for
That's
parenting.
No, I think you're so mindful of that.
Well, I am hyper focused on helping kids feel belonging and feel like they know themselves really well. And belonging is such, a integral part of healthy people. We all want to belong. We all want to be in a community, and it has to start with our children, like learning. Yes, you have your favorite people. Yes, you have your friends that you always want to talk to. But there's always going to be someone new who feels left out. So it's just better to just posture yourself, open to friendship and open to new people coming in. It's really, really important to me. Yeah. I also remember, I remember meeting you, and then we had coffee, and then
How
we
many years
saw
ago
you.
was that?
Oh gosh, it was right after you moved here.
It was 2016 because
Okay.
we moved in
So almost 10,
2015 in the
years.
summer.
Okay.
Actually, like
No,
next
yeah.
week is my 10th anniversary.
Wow.
What, I don't know how you say that, but yeah, next week it'll be 9 years.
Okay.
So, and then we landed at Journey by the end because we were there at the last service in the
Okay.
factory, and then I think that was around the time where I was like, okay, maybe I'll talk to
Okay.
people.
I was just
No, because
curious
it was
how
at
long
Church
ago
of
that
the
was.
City. It
was at the factory.
It was?
Yeah, because I remember, I have a memory, and you were probably still in a place of, I don't want to talk to people. and I saw you on Sunday morning,
You were
and
so
I was
rude.
You blocked it out of your memory.
No, there is kind of like when you've been hurt by the church, there is, a season where especially when you come to this church, it tends to be there's a season of okay, like what just happened? What have I been through? And how do I heal? And how do I still pursue being a Christ follower? And what does that look like? And people have hurt me. And how do I let myself be open to other people again? So you were probably still going through that. And I came to church. I didn't have anyone to sit with. And I was like, oh, I'm going to sit by Suzie. And you were still in the like, oh gosh, I don't know if I want friends yet. Yeah, where I'm just like, I'm okay with people who are on their journey, their own journey,
that have resting bitch face.
I'm okay with it. Like I'm okay. You do you, and you go through what you're going to go through, and I'll do me, and I'll come sit by you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, I love that Krista, like you serve in children's, right?
Yes.
You also serve on our host team, and then you're an elder.
Yes.
And hearing all of this, I have never like heard your whole story, but hearing all of it just makes so much sense. Like why you have so much joy in serving, but also just how good you are with people. It's really cool to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I will say though, there was I've been at Journey for 12 years. And I don't want to make this all about me, but I'll tell you about me. Like I would say the first half of the time that I was at Journey, I just needed to hear, God loves you, God loves you, God loves you. Because I'd been grown up in these environments where it was all about God loved you because of how you behaved.
Yeah.
And so I needed to spend a lot of time undoing that and just really having it sink in. God loves me. God loves me. And it just radically changed me where, I want everyone to have that joy. I want everyone to have that and be so free to be who God made them to be.
I will say that you've also done a really good job passing that on to your sons because they have like such joyful countenances, all three of them.
They're
I know
amazing.
You see the other side of things. I understand that.
But publicly.
But when I see them, like they just have genuine like smiles and they can have great conversation with people and they're cool. They're cool
They're awesome.
men.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I had nothing to do with that. Like they are who they are, and I just was.
You
their
nurtured
mom.
it though.
I just was their
You
mom.
nurtured it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Love that.
Bets,
Hi.
you have an interesting story.
I was raised Catholic, so I went to Catholic school K through 12, and I grew up around the Dominican sisters. So, had a lot of women around me in not necessarily church leadership, but with sisters, they have like a very specific place in the church. Obviously, the Catholic Church is run by men, all the way up to the top.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting. I went to an all-girls school in high school, so 9 through 12 was all girls, and I had friends who were graduating and joining the Mother House, the convent. We had, my best friend when I was a junior and she was a senior, she graduated and just like became a sister, and I was like, okay.
And she still is?
No, she ended up leaving. So there's like a period where it's like 7 years before you take your final vows. So you have 7 years to kind of decide
for sure
if this is what you want. Because once you take your final vows, it's like, this is my life. This is what I'm devoting to. So I grew up a lot around that, which was in hindsight, like really beautiful if I look back on it, because women did have a place in the church. It was just their own place. It was not a place that men could be, which is kind of cool. And I felt like because I went to an all-girls school, we had mass every other week. And we would be like the altar servers, and we would like we would have a priest come in to do the actual like mass, but women, all the girls were doing everything else. And so I just kind of grew up in this like really women empowered environment. And I didn't really think anything of it. like until I went to college, and I was like, why is the student council president a guy? Like, I was like, that's really weird. Like, it was just so bizarre to me because, yeah, my whole life outside of looking at priests in the Catholic Church, which is a whole other thing. I mean, we could go down that path.
There's a lot of paths we could go down.
They can't be married. Yeah.
That,
they can't be married. You know, But I don't remember. What was I saying? I lost my train of thought.
You went to college.
Oh, I went to college, and yeah, there were just like men leaders everywhere. And I was like, this is not how it's supposed to be. Like,
That's so interesting.
This is not how it's supposed to be. And I remember talking to my sister about it because we went to high school together. She was student body president her senior year, like of our whole high school. And she always has been a wonderful leader. And I was just like, this is so weird to me that like the women are losing. Like, I was like, what is this? Because, you know, I was 18 when I finally like saw the real world. And even like I ended up leaving the Catholic Church in 2013, 14, so almost 10 years ago, or 10 plus years ago, I guess. And I'm still learning a lot about like non-denominational, what leadership looks like, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, like even 10 years in, you know, because...
Well, and every community is going to be different.
Exactly. Yeah. Like my husband grew up Pentecostal, and so we come from very different backgrounds.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, women were leading the Pentecostal movement.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just, I have a very interesting, like I have always thought women are wonderful leaders, and they can do everything sometimes better than men. And I think that's just because of the environment I grew up in and how empowered we were. And my husband and I talk all the time about my high school experience because we're not Catholic. Like, I've left the Catholic Church, but I think that was such an invaluable experience. Like, I'm like, beyond the Catholicism, beyond having sisters everywhere and going to mass and, you know, like just
there's a lot of
the
beauty
idea,
in the Catholic Church.
Yeah, the idea that we're just a bunch of women and like none of us wore makeup, we all wore uniforms. Like, we truly had the freedom to excel in academics or leadership or art or religion or, you know, like whatever you kind of wanted to excel in. I feel like that really like made me the woman that I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because like I'm hearing both you and Summer talking about how the outside of the church has shaped you also in different ways, you know? And like, you know, we would be remiss, we're not going to, you know, make this a political podcast, but we would be remiss to not mention that yesterday, I still don't know, is it Kamala or Kamala? Kamala Harris. She got all the delegates that she needed to become the Democratic nominee. But it's so interesting how, like, if you pay attention to what people are saying about that, you know, like, you know, are we ready for a female president? And just from different corners of the Twitterverse of like, you know, some Christian circles saying that women should not be in any form of leadership outside of the church or inside of the church. And we live in such an interesting time because we're kind of post the feminist movement, but yet there's still some progress to be made. And then there's also still some, you know, biases that need to be overcome. And it's really interesting how, you know, people say like the church should be leading the culture, not the culture leading the church, but everything's kind of up for grabs now, it seems like, in terms of that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
One thing I really thought it would be good for us to talk about, because I think there's a lot of stuff out there about what the different views are of women in ministry and all that stuff. And we all have our stories about that. But I would love to hear from you guys because one thing that we are actively mindful of here is how we work together as men and women, you know, in a healthy way. So it doesn't seem like the women are taking over and the men aren't like taking over or whatever. No one's trying to subvert anything, you know. But we work really hard at having great like sibling type relationships and having fun together and working well together. And like there's different things that, you know, you have to be mindful of. And so I don't know that there's a lot of people talking just freely about what it's like and what that pursuit of health working together is. So I would love to hear from you guys about that. Like what your experience has been, like becoming an elder, like how people receive that in your personal life. You know, I know the church obviously was thrilled. And this is since we brought Summer on, our elder team is equally men and women.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And that wasn't like necessarily the goal. I mean, we looked at who was qualified, but it is really something to behold.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I'd love to hear from you guys what that's been like.
I can jump in since I was the one that joined. But it was definitely a conversation that my husband and I had to talk about because he came from a very conservative upbringing and extended family. We actually didn't necessarily make an announcement to them about me being an elder because we already know what their thoughts and opinion would be. And so we just decided not to make it a thing with them because we knew it wouldn't necessarily be something that they would be in celebration of, which is interesting. But thankfully I've got a husband that champions me very well. But one of the things that I was most excited about in joining the elder team was being able to be, you know, with you, Suzie and Krista, and just to be able to be around you more. And Suzie, I've, talked to you about parenting and all sorts of things. And I've gotten to know Krista on a deep level because of a group that we were in together. And so to me, that's one of the biggest gifts of serving with you all, but also being on a collaborative team with men and women. I think it's been really cool to be more behind the scenes, I suppose, in that there's nothing that's been surprising.
Yeah.
So everything that I perceived on the outside looking in is the same as what I see.
Yeah.
More on
which
the
is a
inside
huge
now.
gift because that's not
Yeah.
always the case.
And I remember one of the first meetings that I came to, I think the three of us I don't remember how it came up, but we were just sharing about how women have been viewed or how we've been viewed in the context of church ministry. And it was so interesting to see the men who are elders responding, and they were surprised in a sense, but they were like, man, I can't like I think I said something about you, Suzie, being like, I don't know if trailblazer was the word, but like paving the way for women in leadership within the church. And they were like, man, I'm sorry that there had to be a way that had to be paved. Yeah. And so that was a really like redemptive, I don't know, comment. And I think, the whole structure, like gender aside, the whole structure of our church's leadership, you've used the word mutuality.
Yeah.
I think the whole setup is just not a power over structure. And I think that's such a healthy thing, man or woman, to exist in.
For sure.
So it's been really cool to experience.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, when I was growing up, I didn't see women in leadership, so I didn't think much about it, to be honest. And didn't, went to churches where women weren't in leadership as pastors and elders. And so actually, Suzie, the Sunday, your first sermon that you preached here at Journey, I was here and just remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I think I texted you like, you killed it. Like, it was so good. And it just felt like a shift in our church community. So then when I was asked to be an elder, like I didn't think much about whether that was okay biblically or not okay. It didn't even cross my mind. I was thinking of it more as I'll bring my perspective to this group. And my perspective is something that the male elders, they don't share. And I felt like that could be something valuable to a church community. And then also my husband, he was like, there will be women who will share with you that they would never share with me. And like, that's really important for women to see each other, you know, as resources. And then also I thought about just the examples that I didn't have as a little girl, and thought, wouldn't it be the most amazing thing for the young girls and teenagers and young adult women in this community for it to be normal that women are in leadership, and it's normal. And you have gifts, and you use your gifts, and what, you know, whatever, however God made you to be, you step into that. And so my experience has been fantastic. You know, it's been like very supportive. It's been, I don't even really think when we go in the meetings, like, oh, here's a female and here's a male and here's another male. Like, I don't like it. It's more of a collaborative conversation. Awesome. You know, and we're all sharing our perspectives, and, you know, my perspective and how I know this community and how I serve this community, you know, I'm able to bring that, and, you know, it's good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
That's awesome.
I have a question for you, Suze.
Yeah.
Hearing Krista and Summer just talk about how you have kind of, you know, trailblazed or led the way or whatever we want to call it. And you're constantly the only woman sitting in here with 3 other men. How does that like feel for you? What like emotions do you experience? Like you've been teaching more too, because Mike's been off for a bit. So I know you're teaching Sunday. Just like, how do you feel? Like a pressure? Do you feel like supported? Do you feel? I'm just so curious as like
that's
kind
such
of the
an
woman,
interesting question.
the token.
Token well, I'm not the token woman because you guys now. So that's.
But you have been largely, probably.
Yeah.
I would say you have been.
Yeah, I was the first. I think I was the first woman to be named pastor here, and the first elder, and the first teaching pastor, and that was because the elders at the time, which I think your husband was part of that for a time, that he was an elder at that time. They really took a long time, kind of reading through scripture and discussing and praying and discerning, and which I appreciate, you know, before they kind of came around to that, but. So I have an interesting, like, as you're talking, Krista, I'm thinking about like when I first stepped into those rooms, it took me a long time to like feel like I could show up as me, you know, because I'm so used to deferring to the men in the room, which, you know, a little bit for our listeners who might still be listening, if you want to get under the hood a little bit, like Kevin and Mike had to have like a confrontation with me one time because they were noticing that I was doing that a lot. And they were saying, like, if we're going to have women lead in the church and we're going to do this in a healthy way, you have to stop deferring to us. So, and I mean, I just did it a couple weeks ago in the Q&A when I was teaching, and someone asked me a question and I responded. And then I asked Mike if he wanted to add anything to it. And he was like, no.
That is
you know,
hilarious.
And in my mind, I'm like, he's super smart and has a lot to like really interesting perspective. So now at this point I defer because I genuinely want to hear, like, what do you have to say? And I want to learn from you. And just like I want to learn from all you guys around the table. Like it's a very mutuality is very much the thing. But I think for them, I so appreciate that they really want to create a culture where women don't feel like they have to defer, and that they can be confident. We can be confident in what God has given us and all of that. And so it's almost like it's been reversed a little bit. Whereas before, in previous environments, I always felt like I had to worry about not stepping on toes and not being too much. And and here it's like they're just, come on, like, they're
Say what you want.
Yeah, they're really pulling things out of me. And so we are very mindful of those little bits of things that feel like they really are embodied. Like there's something in me physically that I just like want to defer. And I'm learning not to do that. And even in just the way certain things are presented, like a couple weeks ago, Mike was going to do announcements before I was going to teach. And we had this whole conversation about like, we don't want it to look like he's introducing me as though he's my covering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because that's how it is in some places, like, oh, I'm deferring authority to her, so she's allowed to teach, like that's an actual thing. And Elizabeth Elliot used to have her husband sit on the stage when she would teach, because so that she could be, so people would see that she's submitted to her husband. So it's just, there's so many things that we all come with that but this for me, this has been a really beautiful experience of like, not feeling limited, and also like no one's trying to take over anything. Like, I have a friend who was part of the Vineyard, and she went to a church where she was able to serve equally with the men. And she said to me, she goes, it's amazing how when it's not an issue, it's not an issue, and you can serve in mutual beneficial ways and respectful ways. And it's beautiful. And also there's things you have to be mindful of. Yeah. Because we are different. Yeah. And you do have to be wise, and you do have to, navigate things where women should talk to women only about certain things, and men should talk to men, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, that's great. I will say, just being on staff and like coming in, I was part of a church plant before I came here, but not for very long. So this is like my first real, church staff experience. Aaron and I have been here almost 7 years. And I will say, just having you as like a mentor and a boss and a leader is so incredible. I think for all of us, just to look up to you and to be able to say like, you are kind of trailblazing or setting a really great example for us. It gives me confidence to know that I have a place in this church, and that I, can say what I want to say during staff meeting, and I can step up with ideas or, into my leadership role. And I think that putting Summer and Krista and you, as elders kind of at the forefront of our church is a really beautiful way to empower women like me or other women who are part of our community, who just are like, wow, like if we can have 3 elders, that maybe will give me the power to say, I want to teach a Sunday school, I want to teach in J Kids, or I want to, I want to do something on the host team or whatever. So it's just cool. Thank you.
Well, you really are a great leader.
Thank you.
You pull a room together very beautifully.
Thank you.
And you know how to care for your team, and they just love you, and you're able to mobilize people in really great ways.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's pretty easy to quote unquote lead you. It's not really a lot.
It's easy to be led by you.
It's not a lot of work. To be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I see, like the 4 of us, just I see us being faithful versus striving to be somebody who is worthy of a leadership title, And so a lot of the churches I was in, you had to be the best teacher. You had to be the smartest woman. You had to have written a book. You had to have led worship and, be incredible at that.
Well, there's this sense of like, if you are going to be asked to teach, you better be really good at it, because you don't have as much. This is how I felt before, is like, you don't have much room for failure. Like if you get something theologically incorrect or whatever, like the stakes are much higher when you're in those kinds of environments as a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. But what if you stepped into your gifts because you're gifted in that, instead of
right.
Like being conscious that like you are a gifted teacher, so you should teach, you know, and you're a gifted leader of people, so you should lead, you know. And I think a lot about a lot of the time, like women and young girls, like knowing how they're gifted and what they're made to do and who they're made to be. And so they'll grow up and step into that with confidence, you know, and sometimes it's all the time it's just being faithful to who God made you to be. And, you know, and just getting rid of the, like that whole faithful, effective conversation that just makes me crazy, you know, but just being faithful to who you are.
Because people might not know what you're talking about.
Well, we say a lot, you know, around here, it's like we're called to be faithful and not effective. You know, like I was in church spaces where in order to be validated as a woman and a woman in leadership, you had to have a platform. And then you had to have people following you. And so, you know, like when I stepped into this role as elder, you know, I remember thinking, I don't know what this looks like, because I've never seen a woman be an elder.
Which I asked you for 3 different terms, by the way, and you finally relented and said
I know.
yes.
You had to come back. Well, I was laser focused on doing the other thing. No, I think that in the church especially, we put a lot of emphasis on effectiveness and growth and like growing in numbers. And, you know, I just love the conversation of what if we're all just faithful, you know, and we just step into our gifts because that's what we're called to do.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I love that.
I want to go to a church like that.
I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's a wrap, guys.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. Thank you guys for being here. And did you have something you wanted to add?
No. Great.
Okay.
Loved it.
Thank you guys for being here. This is really special. So
Yeah. Thanks,
I'm
Suze, for
honored
getting us
to
on.
serve with you guys.
Yeah.
I love you guys so much. It's so fun to be part of teams with you. So thank you for being here today, and shout out to Edwin.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Journey Now. If for some bizarre reason you liked it, help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing it on your socials. Journey Now is a production of Journey Church in Brentwood, Tennessee. Edwin Rivera III produces the show and fixes all the guests' slurping, gum chewing, coughing, and other annoying sounds. Randy Hansen provides technical assistance, even though he denies it. Grant Opperman edits Journey Now and intervenes when necessary to tell the crew that you can't say that. Special shout out to dear listener Brad Erie and dear YouTube watcher Seth Erie. If there's anyone else who makes it through each week, we're so sorry, and thanks to you too.